Hey there, it's Louie, and in this Amigurumi crochet pattern, we're going to be crocheting a dugong. These adorable sea cows are closely related to the manatee, as well as their land cousins, the elephant. These endangered gentle giants are the only marine animal that eats solely seagrass. It's for that reason that dugongs are known as ecological engineers. Because of their consistent grazing, up to 40 kilograms or 88 pounds per day, areas with dugong populations are able to promote faster regrowth of seagrass meadows. This in turn captures a significant amount of carbon dioxide linked with climate change. This pattern is not originally designed by me, however, by another amigurumi artist, Drew Hill, aka @Drewby'sZoo. This is part of a huge collaboration project that me and 4 other amigurumi artists are doing to raise money for the World Wildlife Fund, a nonprofit that's mission is to conserve nature and reduce the most pressing threats to diversity of life on Earth. Each designer made a different amigurumi pattern for an endangered creature, which you can see on screen now. These patterns are all donate to download. By donating using the link on screen now or in the description below, you can get all of these patterns in the collection, each of which include a full video tutorial just like this one and an interactive PDF with check marks to keep track of progress and time codes to go along with the video tutorial. 100% of the proceeds for digital downloads will be donated to the World Wildlife Fund indefinitely, so even if you're seeing this pattern years later, you can still support the cause. You can learn more about how to support and find all the patterns and designers in this year's collection and previous years at clubcrochet.com/earthday. And I'll be releasing a new video tutorial for every one of these patterns each Friday over the next 5 weeks, as well as doing a live stream fundraiser the Sunday after. So make sure to like this video and subscribe down below so you don't miss it when we do those new live streams. Oh, or donate to access the videos early and download the PDF versions, of course. Finally, please share your finished dugong with me and @Drewby'sZoo by following and tagging us on social media and using the hashtag Crochet for Earth Day. Oh, also make sure to check out all the other designers' social media accounts too. They're all incredible artists that you definitely should be following if you're not already. Oh, and heads up, there is a left-handed video version of this and that you can find in the description as well. And we're working on a Spanish language PDF for each of these right now, which should be available very soon. Also, you can quickly jump around this video by using the time codes down below in the description or at the bar at the bottom of this video. Alrighty, well, I think that's just about it. Let's talk about what materials you're going to need to make this pattern. For this pattern, I'm going to be using the following materials. Now, I'm going to be using worsted weight yarn, 100% cotton. That's personally my favorite kind of yarn to use for amigurumi, but you can use any kind of yarn that you see fit. Even using like giant bulky yarn might make a really cool looking dugong. So any kind of yarn you use will work. The only colors you're really going to need is gray, your main color. However, it will be nice to have a little bit of a secondary color like black to add the nostrils here. For the hook, we're going to be using a size G 4mm crochet hook. That's because it works best with our worsted weight yarn. If you're going to use a bigger size yarn, use a bigger crochet hook. Other than the yarn and the hook, you also need some safety eyes. I'm going to be using 8mm safety eyes for this. If you'd like to get a bottle eyes just like this, we have them for sale in our shop. 8mm is my favorite size to use for eyes. You can use 6mm as well, but I think 8mm makes a really cute, adorable, like cartoony looking eye for your dugong. I think it's really great. You'll also need a pair of scissors, of course, a darning needle. Try using a crimped end darning needle like this. It helps you get in and out of stitches a lot easier. And then besides those materials, there are some additional materials that you can use, but you do not have to at all for your dugong. Those are white felt like this to add some white around the outside of the eyes. I'll be showing you how to do that in this video. And we'll also be using a little bit of white thread, and that's just going to be to add whiskers to the front of your dugong. But again, those are only optional. You do not have to use those if you don't want to. If you'd like to get a kit with all the materials that you see here, we do have kits available in the shop. You can find links in the description below or on the written version of this pattern. The kits, part of the proceeds for the kits do go to the World Wildlife Fund as well. So it does help for the fundraiser as well, and it comes with the exact materials that I'm using in this video, so it's kind of cool. Okay, well, I think that's everything. Let's get hooking. We're going to start by making the body of our dugong itself, and that includes the top and the tail here. It's all made in one piece, and then we'll add our little fins here afterwards. But the main part of it, the body, is going to be first. All right, well, let's get hooking. We're going to start with our gray yarn. Okay, so for this pattern, I'm going to be using our gray yarn, and we're going to start by making a magic loop. Now, I do have a full video tutorial that teaches not only how to make the magic loop that I'm going to be showing you right now, but there also is some other additional ways to make the magic loop, and I'll put a link right here or in the description for that. But I will be showing you, and I'll go somewhat slow so that it's great for complete beginners. For a magic loop, we're going to hold the yarn down with our middle finger and our thumb of our non-dominant hand. And we're going to go over our index finger and our middle finger at the same time like this, and then back over it again, and then back around the back. Now you want to make an X on the front and 2 parallel lines on the back, so that way you can use your crochet hook to make the magic loop. Take this end, place it in between your ring and pinky finger, and you might want to take this other end here also and put it in between there, and then close it in, and that'll keep it held together. Now take your yarn facing backwards towards you so that the 2 parallel lines are facing you. Take your crochet hook, and we're going to go under the first bar and hook onto the second one, and just pull that second one under the first and then twist it like this to make a little loop. Now go over that first bar and hook onto the second. You might need your index finger to help guide the yarn onto the hook, and then pull that through the loop that you made. The easiest way to do that is really trying to scoop it like that so that you don't accidentally pull through some pieces that you don't want. That's going to create a chain stitch, and now it should keep it locked into position, and you can pull it off of your finger. And now you have this little loop. When you pull this tail end, it'll tighten the loop up a little bit, and we're going to work all of our first stitches into this magic loop here. So for round 1 of our piece, we're going to do 6 single crochets into the center of this magic loop. For a single crochet, we're going to take your crochet hook and go into the stitch. In this case, our stitch is going to be the magic loop itself. So we're going to go into our magic loop, then yarn over with the end attached to the ball of yarn over the crochet hook, and pull that through the stitch, in our case, the magic loop. And now you should have 2 loops on your hook. Now going over the stitch, aka the magic loop, yarn over with the end attached to the ball again, like this, and then pull that loop through the 2 on the hook. The easiest way to do that is to really scoop it like the chain, really scoop it through. And that's going to create what is called a single crochet. Now the majority of this pattern is going to be made with single crochets, so it's a really good stitch to get to know, especially if you're just doing crochet in general. For this first round, we're going to do 6 of those single crochets into this magic loop. So 6 into the same stitch. So we're going to go, there's our first one. Let's go in there again, yarn over and pull through, and then going over the stitch, yarn over and pull through 2, 1, 2. So there's 2. Let's do it again, into the stitch, pull through, over the stitch, pull through 2. Scoop to really make sure you get through there. There's our third, into the stitch, pull through, over the stitch, pull through 2. There's our 4th single crochet. We want 2 more, into the stitch, pull through, over the stitch, pull through 2. There's our 5th, and then 1 more into the stitch, pull through, over the stitch, pull through 2. There you go, and that's going to be 6 single crochets into that magic loop. The best way you can tell is if you look at the V's at the top of your piece here, you're going to see there should be 6 of them. So if you count over from where this loop is coming out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 single crochets into the magic loop. Now we can pull this end here, which will tighten up our loop really nice and tight, create a closed hole there. And that is going to be the end of round 1. You should have 6 single crochets into the magic loop. This pattern is going to be worked into in the round, meaning we're going to keep working in a spiral and we never have to turn around. We're just going to keep working into all the stitches that you made in your previous rounds. To keep track of your progress, let's use a little bit of extra yarn as a stitch marker. And this will be a great way to just keep track of where the round begins and ends. I'm going to be using green, just like our background, which might end up becoming a problem later on, thinking about it now, but whatever. I've already made my decision. We're going to take this end, put it onto our darning needle. You don't really need it on the darning needle, but it works this way. And we're going to go straight through the center of our magic loop with it. And again, this is just going to be so you can keep track of the ends of your rounds. If you have another way to keep track of your ends of rounds using stitch markers, feel free to use that. I'm going to pull it almost all the way out so there's just that little tail end coming out the back. And I'm going to fold it over the end like this. Now after each end of the round, we're going to work around this tail end and it'll keep track of where the rounds begin and end. Okay, so now we're on to round 2. Let's keep that stitch marker over. Now in round 2, we're going to be doing a few different weird stitches into all the single crochets that you made in the previous round. But for the first few stitches, you do want to work around this tail end just so it stays locked into place. So the best way to do that is really just keep it next to our first stitch there. That way you can work around it while you're working in a spiral. Now, our first stitch is going to be right here. That's going to be the one directly. If you count backwards 6, it should find it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's going to be this stitch right here. And for each of our stitches around, we're going to work into both loops. Okay, so you're going to work into both of them simultaneously. You don't want to work only into the front loop or only into the back loop until later. Later, we're going to work only in the back loop. But for right now, you want to work into both loops at the same time. Both of these at the same time. Okay. For round 2, we're going to do, for our first stitch right here, we're going to do 3 single crochets into the exact same stitch. So we're going to take our crochet hook, go into that next stitch under both of those loops at the same time, and we're going to just pretend this other end is not there. We're going to work around it. Yarn over with the end attached to the ball and pull it through that stitch. Imagine that's the magic loop. We're going to pull it through that, and then going over the stitch, yarn over the end attached to the ball again, and pull it through the 2 loops on the hook for our single crochet, just like how we did in round 1. This time though, we want to do 3 of those single crochets into the exact same stitch that you just worked into. So we want 3 of them in the same spot. If you look at where this V is getting pointed in, right there, that is going to be where you want all 3 of the same stitches. So we're going to take your crochet hook, angle it so it's just where that little arrow is pointing, poke it on through, and do our second single crochet. Pull a loop through, then going over, yarn over, and pull through 2. There's our second single crochet into the exact same stitch. You can see how it's kind of like 2 getting bunched into that same place. Let's do 1 more into that same stitch. Take your crochet hook. We want 3 of them in the same stitch. You'll go right where that same place you just went into is. Yarn over and pull through. And then going over, yarn over, and pull through 2. Okay, so that's going to be 3 single crochets into 1 stitch. If you look at the top here, you got 1, 2, 3, and they're all going into that same spot. So we did 3 in the same stitch. The next stitch right here, we want to do an increase. An increase just means 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So basically 1 less than we just did, but in the same stitch. Again, we're just going to work around this tail end just for this next stitch to keep it into place. Take your crochet hook, go under both loops of the next one. That's going to be these 2 right here. Place our tail end over that. Yarn over with the end attached to the ball. Pull it through that loop or that stitch. Yarn over and pull through 2. That's going to be our first single crochet of our increase. We're going to do another single crochet in the same stitch. Again, look at where that stitch is getting pulled into. You can see that little V there. Take your crochet hook, go right into that bottom right there. Yarn over again. Pull through the stitch. Going over the stitch, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops for your second single crochet of that increase. So again, we did 3 single crochets into the first stitch, and then we did 2 single crochets into the next stitch, aka an increase. An increase means 2 single crochets into 1 stitch. So if you were to see something like increase 4, that would mean you'd do 4 increases in a row, meaning 2 single crochets into each stitch for 4 stitches. Okay, so there's single crochet, increase. Next up, we're going to do just 1 single crochet into the next stitch. Before I continue, I'm just going to pull that tail end over and just ignore it. In fact, well, we'll cut the end of this tail end at the end of this round. But for our next stitch here, we just want to do 1 single crochet. So we're going to go into that stitch, pull through, going over the stitch, yarn over, and pull through 2. Okay, so we did 3 single crochets in the first, 2 single crochets into the next, aka an increase, and then 1 single crochet into the third stitch. Now, to finish this round up, we're going to repeat that process one more time. So that means 3 into the next, 2 into the one after that, and then 1 into the last one right here. So let's start with our 3 into the next stitch. It's going to be this stitch right here. 3 single crochets. Pull loop through, going over, pull through 2. Into the same stitch, we want to do 3. So let's go into the same stitch again. Pull through, going over, pull through 2. There's 1, 2. One more time into that same exact stitch. Pull through, going over, pull through 2. There's 1, 2, 3 into that same stitch. Okay, next stitch right here, we want to do an increase. So 2 single crochets into the stitch after. So right here, 2 single crochets, go in, pull loop through, going over, pull through 2. Now 1 more into that same stitch for our increase. Pull through, going over, pull through 2. Okay, so we did 3 into one stitch, 2 into the next, and then into our last stitch right here, we're going to just do 1 single crochet. There we go. And that's going to be the end of round 2. At the end of this round here, you should have 12 stitches around. If you'd like to count your stitches, just look at the V's at the top of the stitches and count around, and there should be 12. Okay, let's pull our stitch marker up like this. And why don't we cut this end here? We don't need this long gray end any longer, so we can just cut it pretty short. And I'm just going to hold this, put this to the side, and we can use this to stuff into our dugong later so we don't have too much waste, which is always really nice to have. Okay, so now we are on to round 3. For round 3, we're going to do a single crochet into the first stitch, and then we're going to do 3 increases in a row. So 1, 2, 3 increases in a row. Again, an increase means 2 single crochets into each stitch. And then we'll do some more stitches after that. But let's start at the beginning. 1 single crochet into the next stitch. I'm working around our tail end here so that we can keep track of the end. Just 1 single crochet. And now 3 increases in a row, 2 single crochets per increase. So in the next stitch here, we'll do our first increase. 2 single crochets. There's 1, 2 into the same stitch. We want 3 of those in a row, so there's 1. Let's do the next stitch here. 1 and 2. There's our second increase, and here's our third increase into the next stitch, meaning 2 single crochets. There's 1 and 2. So 1 single crochet, 3 increases, and let's continue on. Next, we're going to do 3 more single crochets to get to the next increases. So 3 single crochets, 1 for each stitch of the next 3 stitches. So there's 1 single crochet in the next stitch. Here's then 1 after that. There's our second single crochet into the next stitch, and then our third one here. Boom. 3 single crochets. Now we want to do 3 more increases. So an increase into the next 3 stitches. So here's our first one. Here's our first increase. There's 1 single crochet for the increase into the same stitch for our second single crochet. There's our first increase done. We want 3 of them. Let's go into the next stitch right here. Do 2 single crochets. There's 1 into the same stitch, 2, and then into the stitch after that, our third increase, 2 single crochets, 1 into the same stitch, 2. Okay, so there's our 3 increases done. 1, 2, 3. Next up, to finish this round up, we want to do a single crochet into the next 2 stitches. So 2 single crochets in a row. So let's go into this next stitch right here and do 1 of our single crochets. And then into the stitch after it right here to do our final single crochet. And that will be the end of round 3. That's going to be 18 stitches around. So if you want to count your stitches, again, look at the V's at the edge of your piece. And if you count all of them around, there should be 18 single crochets total for the end of that round. We pulled our stitch marker up. And now we are on to round 4. For round 4, it's actually not too crazy, but we are going to be doing something new this time. So this time we're going to be working only into the back loops of your pieces. Okay, so instead of working under both loops like this, we're only going to be working into the loop furthest away from you. That's called the back loop. And we're going to do a single crochet into each of the back loops all the way around. That means there's going to be 18 single crochets total only in the back loops of your piece. So we're going to find our first one. That's going to be the one right after that green stitch marker here. So that's going to be right here. Go only in that back loop. Pull through, yarn over, and then pull through 2. Okay, so there's our first single crochet into the back loop only. We want to do that for all of the stitches. So next stitch right here, only in the back loop, meaning the furthest one away from us. And pull through 2. There's our second single crochet. 1 single crochet for each stitch. That's going to be 18 single crochets total. Let's go into the next back loop. Now, if you wanted to go into both loops, you'd go like this under both of them, but we're only going into this furthest one. There we go. All right, let's keep going around. Back loop single crochet all the way around. And this is why having a stitch marker is really nice, because you don't really need to count your stitches as much. But again, you should have 18 stitches around. And hey, if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Like this video down below, subscribe to the channel, and if you haven't donated already, please consider donating to the World Wildlife Fund. It helps protect our endangered species around the world, and dugongs being one of them. So it really helps the world out, and it's a great cause, and yeah, just please support. And then obviously, you know, like and subscribe, all that fun stuff. Okay, 2 more stitches. There's 1. And this is going to be our last stitch right here. Back loop only. There we go. Okay, so that should be 18 stitches around. You can see by working those back loops only, you can see how it's kind of made our little, like a little platform almost. This is going to be the snout of your piece. So if we looked at our final piece right here, you can see that's what we're making right there. Okay, so that's the end of round 4. For round 5, we're going to do something kind of weird. This is just kind of fun to do for amigurumi. We're going to be using a few different weird, different new stitches. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by doing 4 slip stitches, and then we're going to do 9 half double crochets, and then 5 more slip stitches to get to the end of the round. Now I'm going to teach you what all those stitches mean if you don't know what those mean. But when we make our slip stitches specifically, we want to make them somewhat loose. The only reason I say that is because it's hard to work into those slip stitches in the next round around if you don't work a little bit softer. Now what these stitches are going to do is it's going to make it so some of the stitches are a little bit, they have a smaller height than the other ones, and you'll see what that does later on. It'll give our piece kind of a weird curve to it and give our dugong its shape. So we're going to start by doing 4 slip stitches into the next 1 slip stitch into the next 4 stitches. So for a slip stitch, we're going to go into both loops. We don't need to work into the back loop only now. We can work into both loops, just like that. And we're going to yarn over like we're doing a single crochet and pull through the loop, or through the stitch, but then take that same loop and pull it through the loop on the hook, like that. Try to make sure it's somewhat loose. That's going to be your first slip stitch. So a slip stitch is basically like kind of half of a single crochet, which it makes sense because it makes it half the size of a single crochet. So you want to do, let's see, we want to do 4 of those in a row. So there's 1. Let's go into the next stitch right here, under both loops, yarn over, pull through, and then pull through the loop on the hook for our second slip stitch, giving it a little bit of room. You don't have to make it too loose, but just have it not be too tight. So 1, 2. Here's going to be our third. Pull through, pull through. And here's our 4th. Pull through and pull through. So again, that's 4 slip stitches in a row. Next, we're going to do 9 half double crochets in a row. For a half double crochet, it's going to be a little bit taller than a single crochet. For that, we're going to yarn over for our crochet hook and then go into the next stitch under both loops like so. Yarn over again and pull that through the loop or through the stitch. Then yarn over again and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. There should be 3 total. The easiest way to get through all those to make sure you don't accidentally pull the wrong stitch is just really try to do a scoop. It'll help you get through all those stitches if you're having a hard time. So that's going to be 4 slip stitches and then 9 of these half double crochets. So there's our first one. Let's go into the next stitch here, yarn over, go into the next stitch, yarn over again and pull through, yarn over again and pull through all the loops on the hook. While you make these slips or these half double crochets, you want to actually make these half double crochets a little bit tighter. So if you have control over your yarn, this is hard to say, hard to ask for you to do if you're just starting out crocheting. But if you're more used to crocheting, it's really nice to do those slip stitches nice and loose, and then these half double crochets nice and tight. The reason is because these half double crochets, if they are loose like the slip stitches, it's going to make your yarn have really big holes in it, and your stuffing is going to be seen through. So it's nice to have your half double crochets a little bit tighter. So there's 1, 2, we want 9 of these total. Yarn over, into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through that stitch, yarn over again and pull through all 3 loops. Incorporate a scoop to really make sure through that. So 1, 2, 3. Here's our 4th half double crochet. There's our 5th half double. Here's going to be our 6th half double crochet. 7. There's 8. And then one more will be 9 half double crochets. If you want to count your half double crochets so you make sure you have them, you can really tell the difference between slip stitches and half double crochets. The half double crochets are going to have this extra like strand in front of them. So you can see how they're like 1, 2, these are all half double crochets. This one's a slip stitch. It's basically just that top V. But the half double crochets have more height and this extra little strand between them. To finish up this round, we're going to do 5 more slip stitches, 1 into the next 5 stitches. So we're going to go into the next one here and do another slip stitch, pull through, and then pull through. And again, try to make those somewhat loose, not too loose, but just enough so it's not too difficult to get your crochet hook into in the next round. That's 1, 2, 3. It's going to be 4 and 5. Okay, let's pull our stitch marker up. I actually forgot to pull a stitch marker up the last round, but that's okay. Okay, so that's going to be the end of that round. That was round 5. For round 6, we're going to do a little bit more shaping again. We don't need to use half double crochets for round 6, but we will still need to use our slip stitches. To start round 6, we're going to do 4 slip stitches, and then we're going to do some regular stitches after that. For our slip stitches, you want to work into the same stitches that you worked into prior, like this, but it can be kind of hard to get under these stitches because you might make your slip stitches a little too tight. There is your little note, don't do it too tight. It can be hard to do. If it does get tough to do, just really point it right in between there and really push it. Just push it down and in, and you'll get through that stitch eventually. The harder part is pulling it through it. To pull it through it, yarn over, and scoop. Really try to scoop it if you're having a hard time getting through that stitch. Okay, we want 5 slip stitches in a row. So there's our first slip stitch. Here's our second one. Pull through. Give it a little bit more space for your stitch. There's our second slip stitch. There's our third. You can see me kind of wiggling it out. This is going to be our 4th slip stitch right there. Okay, 4 slip stitches. Next, we're going to do 3 increases. We don't need to use half double crochets anymore. We just want to do regular single crochets. But our next 3 stitches are an increase, meaning 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So we're going to go into this next stitch under both of those loops at the top of the stitch. Pull through, and yarn over, pull through 2. There's our first single crochet of our first increase. Let's go into the same stitch. Look at where that V is being pointed into. Go right where that bottom of that stitch is. Yarn over, pull through, and pull through 2. Okay, so there's our first increase. We want 3 increases in a row. So there's 1. There's 1 single crochet and 2 single crochets for our second increase, and here's going to be our third. 1 single crochet and 2 single crochets for our third increase. After doing your 3 increases, you want to do 3 more single crochets to get to 3 more increases after that. So a single crochet into the next 3 stitches. 1, really make sure you're going under only these top 2 loops here. There's 2 and 3. After doing those 3 single crochets, you want to do 3 more increases. So that means 2 single crochets into the next 3 stitches. There's 1 and 2, our first increase. 3 and 4, that's our second increase. And then 5 and 6 will be our third increase stitch. To finish up this round, round 6, we want to do 5 more slip stitches to get to the end of the round. So under both of those loops of the next stitch, we want to do a slip stitch. We pull through and pull through, leave it kind of loose-ish so that it's easy to work into in the next round. So there's 1, we want 5 of those. 2, 3, and you can see how I'm still having struggle to get under them, so it can be a bit of a struggle. 4, 1 more. There we go. 5. All right, and that's going to be the end of round 6. We can pull our stitch marker up now. And now we're into round 7. In fact, for the next 2 rounds, round 7 and 8, it's going to be the exact same round for both of these rounds in a row. For that, for the stitches, we're going to do 5 slip stitches, 15 half double crochets, and then 4 more slip stitches to get to the end of the round. And that's going to be done for 2 rounds in a row. Let's just get started. That's going to be 5 slip stitches. Go under the next stitch here. We'll go 1. Next stitch after that. Really make sure they're looser so it's not too hard to get into it in the next round. There's 2. See how I had to wiggle it there because it was having a tough time to get in. There's 3. Here's our next one. There's 4. And then 1 more into this next stitch. Again, look at the top of the stitch to find your where you're going in with your crochet hook. And there is our 5th slip stitch. Okay, so 5 slip stitches. And then we want to do 15 half double crochets. So we're going to yarn over into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then going over the stitch, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops for a half double crochet, scooping to make sure you get under all those loops. There's 1. We want to do 15 of those. So there's 1, 2. Again, that's yarn over into the stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 half double crochets, 8, there's 9, 10, 11, 12, get a little bit more yarn, 13, 14, and then 1 more. That's going to be 15 half double crochets. Okay, so after doing those 15 half double crochets, we want 4 more slip stitches to get to the end of this round. Did I forget to pull my stitch marker up? I might have. That's okay. We'll clean that up a little bit. So for our next 4 stitches, we want slip stitches. So we're going to go into this next stitch and just do a slip stitch. So we're going to go 1, 2, really try to make sure it's loose enough so it's not too tough in the next round, 3, and last one right here. It's going to be 4. Okay, and then I guess we can pull it, stitch marker up. I feel like our stitch marker is kind of failing us for these slip stitches, but that's okay. We'll clean it up a little bit later after we get done with these slip stitching rounds. All right, so now we're on to round 8. It's the exact same pattern, 5 slip stitches, 15 half double crochets, and then 4 more slip stitches. So let's just get going. Going under the next stitch right here. You can see how that, yeah, our stitch marker is kind of getting in our way a little bit. So we're just going to have to figure our way around it. There we go. Oopsies, I did a single crochet. That's supposed to be a slip stitch. There we go. There's 1. I want 5 of these. 2. 3. 4. Last one right here. This one I accidentally made way too tight. That's okay. We're going to make it work. There we go. So that's 5 slip stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then our 15 half double crochets to get to the next slip stitches. Into the top of our loops here, 15 half double crochets. And shout out to Drooby Zoo, the designer for this pattern. If you haven't checked out Drooby Zoo yet, he's really popular on TikTok and he's also on Instagram. He makes some really cool patterns. You can find his patterns on Ribbler, but he's also all over the place. In fact, we have done a few patterns together in our library. If you've seen our giant strawberry pattern, that is Drooby Zoo. He's a very talented amigurumi artist, and he actually has a book coming out soon, so make sure to check him out. He is a very cool dude. Just in general, he's just a really cool, funny dude. We get along very well. I think we have a very similar sense of humor. Okay, so we only have 3 more stitches for our 15 half double crochets. There's for our 14th half double crochet, and this will be our 15th half double crochet. And you can see I made them a little bit tight because I don't want my yarn or my stuffing showing through at all. Okay, for our last part of this round, round 8 here, we want 4 more slip stitches to get to the end of the round. So we're going to go into our next stitch here and do a slip stitch into 4 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then here's our 4th. 4. Okay. Pull our stitch marker up and through. And that's going to be the end of round 8. And that's actually going to be the end of doing our weird slip stitches too. But you kind of see how it's shaping our piece. It's making it pull in like that, which is giving it like this weird, like this cool shape of like turning. Yeah. It's very unique for amigurumi. And I think it's really cool. All right. So now we're on to round 9. Round 9 is nice and simple. For round 9, all you have to do is do a single crochet into each stitch around. That's it. We're just going to do single crochets. There should be 24 stitches total for this round. In fact, your last 2 rounds were also 24 stitches. I'm sorry I didn't mention that sooner. But just a single crochet into each stitch all the way around. Make sure you're working into the top of the loops, like so. Just 24 single crochets around. Okay, we're about halfway there now. Just a few more. And it's always nice to have a few rounds of just single crochets. All right, coming to the end of our round here, I'm working into our slip stitches now. 1, oopsies, 2, Ah. Did I miss one? No, 1, 2, 3. This is our last one. Okay, got it. There's 4. Okay, so there should be 24 stitches around now, our single crochets, and that's going to be the end of round 9. Okay, so we're now on round 10. For round 10, first off, let's pull our stitch marker up. And actually, maybe we should clean this up a little bit. Well, no, let's just keep it going. We'll clean it up later. For round 10, we're going to do 3 single crochets and then an increase stitch. And then we're going to repeat that same process 6 times total. So 3 single crochets and then an increase, repeat it around. So another 3, increase, 3, increase, 3, increase. And again, an increase means 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So let's just get started here. We're going to do 3 single crochets. There's 1, 2, and 3 single crochets, and then an increase into our next right here. 1 and 2 into the same stitch. Okay, so we want to repeat that 6 times total. There's our first repeat. Let's do it again. 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then our increase right here. And this is going to bring you up from 24 stitches up to 30 stitches. So we're doing our third repeat here, 1, 2, and 3, and then our increase right here, 1, and then into the same stitch, 2. Yeah, and so you should have 30 stitches around by the end of round 10 here. 2, 3, increase. So again, 1, 2, 3, and then an increase right here. One more repeat, 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then an increase. 1 and 2. All right, and pull our stitch marker up. That's going to be the end of round 10. For round 11, we're going to do 4 single crochets and then an increase. So we're just adding an additional single crochet between increases. And then we're going to repeat that process 6 times in a row. So that's 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our increase stitch right here. 1 and 2 single crochets in the same stitch for that increase. And let's repeat that process 6 times around. Let's do our second repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4 single crochets, and then our increase 1 and 2 into the same stitch. And this round should bring you up from 30 stitches up to 36 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our increase. So you should have 36 stitches by the end of round 11 here. And I believe 36 stitches is the highest stitch count that we're going to have for this pattern. So you won't need to do any more increasing up larger. We will need to use increases again when we get to our tail, but I think we don't need to use increases for a little bit. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our increase. And then the last one's 1, oopsies, 2, 3, 4, and then our final increase right here. Okay. And that's going to be the end of round 11. You can see our pattern coming together there. For round 12, we're just going to do a single crochet into each stitch around. First, let's pull up our stitch marker, and then we're just going to do 1 single crochet for each stitch. Again, there should be 36 stitches around, so this is a good opportunity for you to check your stitches if you haven't yet. But just a single crochet into every stitch all the way around. If you haven't yet, consider becoming a Club Crochet member if you would like to. Memberships on Club Crochet get you access to all of our digital patterns. We have, I think, over 200 patterns now, and I add new patterns every single month. And it gets you access to all of them, each of which have a full video tutorial. They have a downloadable PDF, and you can even get monthly kits mailed directly to your door with all the materials that you need to make whatever new patterns we're adding to the library that month. So this month's new patterns are for all of these endangered creatures, and so a membership gets you access to, will get you all those patterns, and a portion of your membership this month of any new signups will go to the World Wildlife Fund. So it is a great way to also help support the fundraiser if you'd like to. However, I suggest if you haven't yet, please consider donating to this fundraiser. It's a really good cause, so please do so if you haven't yet. Okay, so we're on to around our stitch 35, and this will be our 36th stitch there. Pull our stitch marker up, and that will be the end of round 12. Okay, so now we're on to round 13. For round 13, we're going to add a new stitch to your arsenal, an invisible decrease. But first, we need to get to those invisible decreases. For round 13, we're going to do 9 single crochets, and then we're going to start a repeat. So 9 single crochets to start. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 single crochets to get started. Now, after you do those 9 single crochets, we're going to start a repeat. The repeat is 1 single crochet and then 1 invisible decrease 6 times in a row. Let me just get those started, and I'll show you how to do the invisible decrease. So again, the repeat is 1 single crochet, so a single crochet in the next stitch, and then an invisible decrease in the stitch after that. For an invisible decrease, we're going to go only into the front loops. So the front loop's only for 2 stitches in a row. So that's this front loop and this front loop at the same time. After you go into those front loops, you're going to do a single crochet through them. Let me show you the easiest way to get through them though. You take your crochet hook and you want to go up from the very bottom of the stitch like this and point straight up. That's the easiest way to get through just the front loop. Once you're under the first front loop, spin the crochet hook around like this to get into position for the next stitch, and then go straight up like that to get through the next front loop. Now once you're into those 2 front loops, yarn over and pull through those 2 front loops. Easiest way, really scoop it to make sure you get through all those stitches. And then once you pull through those two front loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops on the hook. Okay, so you're basically doing a single crochet into 2 front loops at the same time. That's called an invisible decrease, and it's a very good decrease that slowly pulls it in. So that's going to be 1 single crochet, 1 invisible decrease 6 times in a row. Let's do our second repeat. Our next stitch looks like it might be there, but it's actually not. It's right here. So that's important that you don't accidentally go into the same stitch. So 1 single crochet, and then 1 invisible decrease. Front loop, and then do your single crochet. Pull through, pull through. So there's our second repeat. Here's our third repeat, single crochet, front loop, single crochet. Here's our fourth repeat, single crochet 1, and then front loop, single crochet. Okay, just a few more repeats. Single crochet 1. I think that was our fourth, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this is our fifth. Front loop, single crochet. And then our last repeat, single crochet 1, then front loop, single crochet for our invisible decrease. Okay, after doing those 6 repeats, you want to do 9 more single crochets to get to the end of this round. So that's not too crazy, just 9 single crochets, 1 single crochet per stitch for 9 stitches in a row. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And that'll get you to the end of our round there. That's going to be the end of round 13. We'll pull our stitch marker up, and now we are on to round 14. For round 14, pretty easy. We're just going to do a single crochet into every stitch all the way around. Not too crazy, just a single crochet into each stitch around. There should be 30 stitches now after round 13. So round 13 brought us down to 30 stitches. So now you should do a single crochet into each stitch around, and that's 30 single crochets total. So that's not too crazy, you know, just a nice break, just doing single crochets all the way around. It's a good opportunity for you to count your stitches if you haven't already counted your stitches. Okay, about halfway through now. Just a few more. This will actually be the end of our the head of our dugong. A little bit more yarn. And a few more stitches. 1, 2, 3. Let's see. 3 more. 1, 2, and this will be our 30th single crochet and the end of round 14. Okay, so before we continue on to the tail part of our dugong, let's pull our stitch marker or loop out, and now we're going to be adding our face of our dugong. The first thing we want to do is we want to add our eyes. Now, before we add our eyes even, we want to make our white felt that goes around the outside of the eyes. This is completely not necessary. Here's what it looks like with the white felt, and here's what it looks like without the white felt. It looks pretty good regardless, you know? It just adds a little bit of something extra if you want to, but it's not necessary for your pattern. To add the white felt, you just want a little bitty square of white felt. You don't need very much. Actually, let's get our eyes as well. We're using 8mm eyes for this. And again, if you want to get this bottle eyes in the shop, now we have eyes. We have either 6mm, 8mm, or 10mm eyes that come into these little bottles. Okay, so once we got our eyes ready, we want to cut little tiny circles out of this. The circles, I don't really know exactly how big to make the circles. It depends on your safety eye. I would say probably about 1/2 inch. So we're just going to cut a little one. First, you got to make one. So we're going to go ahead. I'm just going to cut straight across like this to make a long rectangle. And then let's go ahead and cut it into a square. Just eyeing it just about like that. Looks pretty good. And we'll take that little square and we're going to cut this square into a little tiny circle. We're just going to cut off all the edges here. I'm just kind of eye it and make a little circle. If you want other ways to add customization to your eyes, I actually have a video where I explain 5 different ways that you can customize your safety eyes if you would like to. Okay, there we go. So we have a little tiny circle like that. You see how that's going to go around the eye. It's going to go a little bit further in, but you get the gist. Now we want to make a secondary circle that's the exact same size. So the way to do that is we're just going to place this circle over that extra bit of felt there. And we're just going to cut around that circle to make our next circle the same size. It's really nice to have very sharp scissors for this part to make sure that you can cut the felt perfectly. I'm just going to keep going around. I'm just going nice and slow, trying to make sure that it's at least as close as I can get to the other circle. We'll probably have to clean it up a little bit, but it won't be too bad. And there we go. So now we have 2 very small circles. Now this is our second circle here. I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. I have just a little bit of felt there that I want to cut off to make it a little even. All right, we can throw this felt to the side to stuff it up. And next up for these little felt bits is we want to make a little tiny hole in the circle itself. The hole, however, we want it to be slightly off center. So we don't want it to be right in the center. We want it to be just a little bit off center, like right like there. Now you can use a needle to just kind of like get in there and make the hole. But I find it's actually easiest to just take your scissors, especially if you have sharp ones, go halfway through like that, and just cut a little line to the center. Like that. And then do the same thing up the top like that. It's basically make a little X by cutting through it. Okay, so that'll make a little tiny hole, and then I'm going to use my needle to just get that in there, stretch it out just a little bit. Once you have that hole, you're going to take your eye, place it right over where that hole is, and just wiggle the eye in around that felt. There we go. And you can clean this up a little bit to make it more circular if you'd like. So we can just cut around that top there to make it more like a circle. It's pretty good. Now let's do the same with this other eye. We're just going to go slightly off center and then cut towards the center. Be careful, don't accidentally cut yourself, obviously. And then we'll cut up and down to make a little X. Turn around. Oopsies. Okay. Take our needle, go right through that. Stretch it out. I like to kind of twist my needle there to help stretch it out. Then get the other eye. Place it right in where that hole is, and then we'll just wiggle it until it's in. And there's no specific like size for these little half circles. I just kind of like eye it and then eye it. Ha ha ha, I'm so funny. And then I try to cut them so that they're in a similar shape as the other one. It looks like this one looks, well, let's put it on the face and then figure it out. If we want to cut the eye, the white part a little bit more. The specific stitches for the face, you're going to go in between rounds 6 and 7, about 11 stitches apart from each other, on the half double crochet side of the face, not the slip stitch side. So we're not going to do it up here, down here. We're going to do it up here. So we're going to first find between rounds 6 and 7. So if you count from the beginning here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that'll be 6. The best place I found is like right in between those increase stitches. I'm pretty sure that's where I used it right here. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, so if you go right in between that first increase that you made in, I think that's round 6. So if you go in between that first increase you made in round 6, that's probably the best place to start it. Place one eye right there. And then I'm going to count over 11 stitches from that. Let's open it up a little bit. We'll go from over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That would be right there. Let's see, does that look right? Or should we go, actually, let's move it over one. Let's move it up one, actually. Instead of going between that one, let's go up one right here. So we're going to go between the first and second increase in round 6, and then between the last 2 increases in the round as well. So right here. That should be 11 stitches apart. And let's see how that looks. Hey, that's not too bad, I gotta say. That looks pretty good to me. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay. Now, if you want to, just before you close it, like lock it in, if you want to be sure, crochet a little bit more just to make sure, and then you can lock it in just in case. I think I'm gonna let's look on the other ones here and just make sure that's exactly where I put it. Looks like I did it between the increase in that one. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's count these ones again just to make sure. I don't want to mess it up, you know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, yeah. Okay. We're going to count it. We're going to do it. Take our locking mechanism, go into the back here, and just pop it on. Boop. There's one on. If you want to cut this eye a little bit more to make it more like nicely shaped, you can. Place over the second eye. Lock it in there. But yeah, now's your opportunity. If you want to cut the eyes a little bit more to make them work better, you totally can. We are going to add a little bit of felt over this. A little bit of yarn over that to make it kind of look like a little bit sad, like a little bit curved in there. And that's also going to pull in our eyes to make them a little more indented, which we'll talk about at the end of this pattern after we've stuffed it and sewn it closed. But next up, we want to add our little... let's see. Oh, yeah, we want to add our little nostrils. Of course, we want to add our nostrils. So we want to get our black yarn. You don't need very much of this black yarn. This will be probably just fine. In fact, that's way more than we need, but that's okay. Thread it onto our needle. And we're just going to make 2 little nostrils on the front. I think it's best to go like right here. And this part I just kind of figured out. We're going to go down through 1 stitch there, and then we're going to go up through this one, and then down through a stitch under that one too. See how that looks. So there's 1. And if we go right here, like this maybe, see how that looks too. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty simple. We're just doing that. And then once you have it on sewn in there, we'll just take these 2 ends on the inside and then double knot them together. Try not to pull it too tight or you might pull the nose in a little bit and you don't really want that. So you just want to try to make sure it's tight in there but not too crazy tight. There we go. And then we're going to cut it somewhat close on the inside. You can see how we're going to cut it pretty close, like right there. And we'll save this thread for stuffing our piece up with later with our extra felt and our other ends of yarns and stuff like that. Okay, so we got our nostrils on there, we got our eyes attached. We'll do a little bit more face stuff at the end of our pattern once we have it sewn closed. We'll add our little white thread and stuff as well. But now we can continue on in our pattern, and we are actually on round 15 of our pattern. And before we continue to this next round, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these stitch markers out. See how they kind of do that, like weird, like little curve like that? That's because of the slip stitches. They pull your stitches in a weird direction. But I'm going to pull out until about right here, just so that we have a little bit more of our stitch marker to use, and so that it's a little bit easier on us later when we need to remove our stitch marker completely. But you basically just need to go in through and just pull the stitch markers out like that. One or 2 more I think should be good. I really just wanted to get it past those slip stitches because I know how difficult those slip stitches are going to be to pull it out of later on. Okay, this should be a good last one. And we're just going to pull our stitch marker up to pull it somewhat tighter again, like that. Okay. Get our yarn ready. And we're going to continue on to the Dugong tail. All right, for this next round, we are going to be working into all our stitches like normal, and we're going to start by doing 6 single crochets, and then we're going to start doing that repeat that we did for that previous round. That's 1 single crochet and then invisible decrease 6 times around. But let's start by getting there. Start by doing 6 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1 more right here, 6. Okay, after doing 6 single crochets, we're going to start our repeat. Our repeat again is 1 single crochet and then an invisible decrease 6 times in a row. So let's start that repeat. 1 single crochet, 1 invisible decrease. Again, that's front loop, single crochet. 6 of those in a row. So let's do it. Our second repeat, single crochet 1, invisible decrease 1, front loop, single crochet. There's our second repeat. Here's our third, single crochet, front loop, oopsies, front loop. I'm having a hard time with that next front loop. There we go. Single crochet. Fourth repeat, single crochet, then a front loop, and then another one. So that's going to be our fourth, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 more repeats. Here's our fifth, single crochet 1, and then front loop, single crochet. That's going to be our fifth, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, one more. Keep losing count. Single crochet 1, last repeat, front loop, single crochet. It's going to be our sixth invisible decrease. Now to finish up round 15 here, you want to do 6 more single crochets to get to the end of this round. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We'll pull this stitch marker up like that, and you can see how our piece is coming together. We're pulling it in now, and that looks pretty good. All right, and that's the end of round 15. For rounds 16 and 17, that's 2 rounds total, 16 and 17, 2 rounds in a row. We just want to do a single crochet into each stitch around. So that's 24 single crochets total. That's how many stitches you should have per round, but 2 rounds of those. So that's a single crochet into each stitch around for 2 rounds. Just want to repeat it so you don't forget. So I'm just going to go ahead and do our 2 rounds of 24 single crochets per round, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, that's going to be the end of round 17. That's our 2 rounds of single crochets done. I'm going to pull our stitch marker up there. And now we need to just stuff it slightly. Well, actually, in the pattern it says stuff mostly. We're basically going to stuff the head of our piece now. Just grab some stuffing. I'm going to use some extra little threads here too to stuff it so that we have a little bit less waste. Just some extra threads that I've used, I've cut off of past patterns. It's just a great way to not have too much waste when you're stuffing your pieces up. Okay, and then we can also stuff it with our extra little threads here, like that. And I think that's pretty good for the start of our stuffing. We will be stuffing it a little bit more later. So yeah, and we're also going to do some stuff with the eyes here. So don't worry if you feel like your face is like being blown out like that. Don't worry about it. We're just going to be sewing them in like this to make it more indented at the end of this at the end of our piece. Okay. There we go. And now we are on to round 18. So pull our stitch marker up there. For round 18, just a pretty easy round of repeats here. We're going to do 2 single crochets and then an invisible decrease repeated 6 times in a row. Currently we have 24 stitches around. By doing our repeat here, it's going to bring us down to 18 stitches around. So let's go ahead and get that started. Again, that repeat is 2 single crochets, 1 and 2, and then an invisible decrease. Front loop, single crochet. And that we want to do that repeat 6 times in a row. So let's do our second repeat. 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and then an invisible decrease. Front loop, single crochet. There's our second repeat. Here's our third. And then again, this round should bring you down from 24 stitches back down to 18 stitches around. So you should have 18 stitches by the end of this round. Nice and easy. 1, 2, and then invisible decrease. Then 1, 2, and then our final invisible decrease, front loop, single crochet. All right, that's going to be the end of round 18. For the end of round 18, you should have 18 stitches around, which is kind of cool. I actually didn't notice that until now. Let's pull our stitch marker up here, and now we're on to round 19. For round 19, pretty easy round. We're just going to do a single crochet into each stitch around. That's 18 single crochets total. So let's go ahead and get that started. Just a single crochet into each stitch around, 18 stitches total. And again, if you haven't yet, please like this video down below, subscribe to the channel, and then also in the comments, let me know what kind of endangered species or endangered creatures you would like to see next, or what kind of endangered creatures you think in your mind need the most protection. Really, either one is a great answer, because we need to take care of our world. We need to take care of our planet and the life that we have here. So let me know what kind of endangered species you'd like to see crocheted next year for our World Wildlife Fund fundraiser again, which I'm sure we'll do again next year. All right, and that's going to be the end of round 18. Round 19. You should have 18 stitches around, all single crochets. Pull our stitch marker up, and now we're on to round 20. For round 20, we're going to do a single crochet into the first stitch, and then an invisible decrease into the next. Front loop, oopsies. Let's try that second front loop again. There we go. And then single crochet. And you're going to repeat that process 6 times total. So single crochet, invisible decrease 6 times in a row. Let's do our second repeat. Single crochet 1, invisible decrease 1. One front loop and a single crochet. And this is going to bring you down from 18 stitches back down to 12 stitches around. Again, remember that repeat is a single crochet into our first stitch, invisible decrease into the second stitch. And we're just repeating this all the way around till we get to the end of the round. That's going to repeat 6 times total. At least that's what it should repeat. Front loop, single crochet. Last bit, single crochet 1, and then front loop, single crochet. All right, and that's going to be the end of round 20. Pull our stitch marker up here. And now we're on to round 21. For round 21, nice and easy, just a single crochet into each stitch around. That's going to be 12 single crochets total. So that's it. You just need to do 12 single crochets total. And you will be surprised to know that this is almost the end of our round, actually. We only have a few more rounds left, and that's going to be because we're going to be making the tail, which is going to be a little bit fancy, but don't worry about it. I will take us through it one stitch at a time so that we don't goof it up. And then this is a good chance for you to count your stitches again if you haven't yet already. As it gets smaller here, it's easier, instead of putting my finger in there to help me get my crochet hook into position, it's easier to actually just pinch the end like that, and then get into our stitches like so. Okay, that's going to be the end of round 21. Pull our stitch marker up. It looks like it already is, which is nice. And now we're on to round 22. For round 22, we're going to just do an invisible decrease into each stitch around. That's going to make 6 invisible decreases total, which is going to bring your stitch count from 12 down to 6. Pretty easy. All we have to do is do 6 invisible decreases. Take the crochet hook and do front loop, single crochet, and that's going to be 1, front loop. See how I'm using my finger to help get that hook through? Single crochet. Front loop, single crochet. I believe that's going to be 1, 2, 3. Let's do a few more. Front loop, single crochet. Couple more. Front loop. There's our oopsies. Screwed that one up. Let's try that one again. Front loop. There we go. And last one, really try to pinch it here. It's kind of hard to see it, but it's going to be this stitch right here, front loop and a front loop, and then our single crochet. And now you should only have 6 stitches around. I'm going to pull my loop out a little bit because we're going to stuff it a little bit more. But I also want to show you where your stitches are. If you want to count your stitches around, that's going to be right after the stitch marker right here is going to be your first one. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to be the last stitch where your loop is coming out right here. And yeah, you should have 6 stitches around. That's the end of round 22. Before we continue on to our next round, we just need to stuff it a bit more. So I'm going to grab a little bit more stuffing. And this time I'm going to grab more like regular stuffing instead of actual threads, because it's kind of hard to stuff your piece with threads when the end is this small. And I'm just going to be using the back of my crochet hook. If you have a hard time stuffing in with the back of your crochet hook, it can be really nice to have like a stick. Let me show you. Like this. Actually, these end up coming with your with a lot of stuffing. Let's get this open a little bit more. This actually comes with a lot of stuffing packets. So if you need one of these, it's probably in your stuffing. They're kind of sometimes just like hidden in there. But the reason I usually like to use the back of my crochet hook instead is because it has a rubber end and it actually grips the stuffing a little bit to help it guide the stuffing in there. There you go. I actually want to get all this stuffing in there because this is going to be our last chance to stuff up, and we do not want it to be understuffed. Of course, we don't want it overstuffed either, but you know, we want it to be stuffed up a normal amount. And if we don't put our stuffing in now, we might not get a chance to later. It's better now than never. Let's see how our piece is going. See, you can still see that it's understuffed because you can see how it's like not shaped right. So we want to add more stuffing here. And I just kind of like hold the piece into position and then use the back of my crochet hook. I just need to like keep it in place so I know exactly where the hole is that I'm stuffing it in with. And I'm just doing a little bit of stuffing at a time instead of doing like a big batch of it at once. Makes it a little bit easier. And I'm kind of just poking into the places where I don't think that there's much stuffing into. So like see at the top here where it's kind of like denting in, I want to put more stuffing right up there. And obviously it's easier to feel this than it is to actually see it, but there we go. And you want to be careful of overstuffing your dugong because the half double crochets here really do show stuffing through if you're not careful. So I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I like that. All right, that's stuffed fully. All right. So let's continue our piece around. Let's get our stitch marker into place. And now we are on to round 23. For round 23, we're going to do an increase into each stitch around. Again, an increase means 2 single crochets into each stitch around. We only had 6 stitches around, so now we're going to increase up, and that's going to make it into 12 stitches around. So I'm going to take your crochet hook. I'm actually not going to work around, well, okay, let's work around the tail end, or the stitch marker. Pull our stitch marker over, and now we're going to go into the next stitch right here. Make sure you're under both of those loops, so you can see I'm kind of under both of those loops there. And then we want to do an increase, so single crochet 1, and then another one into the exact same stitch, 2. So there's 1, 2. I'm just going to keep doing that all the way around, which is going to bring you up from 6 stitches to 12 stitches. There's 3 and 4, 2 single crochets in each stitch around. This is going to be 5 and 6. See how our piece is coming together. It's going to be 7 and 8. And then 9 and 10. And then our last 2 into this last stitch right here will be 11, and 12. Okay, pull our stitch marker up, and that's going to be the end of round 23. Now we're on to round 24. For round 24, we're just going to do a single crochet into each stitch around. So not too bad. There should still be 12 stitches around, and just do a single crochet into each one. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, and that's going to be the end of round 24. Okay, now we got our stitch marker here. We're not going to work around the stitch marker for this next round because this is actually our very last round. So for this last round, we're going to be making this tail. And this is going to be kind of interesting. I don't think I've ever done this before. Well, maybe I have, but not like this. So it's a very unique pattern here. Basically, what Droopy Zoo is doing is you want to press the tail flat. Okay, so you want to press it flat. And we're going to work into both... we're going to be working into both sides at the same time to close the tail off. So we're going to line it up so that the next stitch is even with the last stitch worked into in round 24. And then we're going to work into both stitches simultaneously. We're going to continue across the row, making sure that you insert your hook into the stitch on the front half and the corresponding stitch on the back half at the same time. Okay? And we're going to do the following stitches into these stitches while I do that. Now, obviously, I'm going to show you what that really means, but it's good to hear it. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start by chaining 1, like that, and then we're going to go into this next stitch right here. We're going to work a double crochet stitch into this next stitch, and I'm going to pull our stitch marker out a little bit. We're going to work into this stitch, and we're going to work into this stitch. That's going to be the last stitch that you did. So we're going to work into both of these at the same time. It's kind of nice to have your needle actually to help you know exactly where you're going to work into there. But after you do that chain 1, maybe get your needle to line it up right. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a double crochet into this stitch, and then we're going to do a picot, which I'm going to show you in a second. It's also called a picot, which is basically you chain 3 and then you slip stitch into the first chain that you made. And then we're going to do another double crochet into that same exact stitch. I'm just trying to prepare you as much as possible before we actually do this. So pull our needle out. Well, let's get our crochet hook in place. We can keep our loop out a little bit as we maneuver our stitch around. Pull our stitch marker or our needle through there and take our crochet hook, and we're going to go front or into the first loop and then the second loop right here. Okay, once you're into both of those loops with the crochet hook on there, actually, I'm sorry, we needed to yarn over before we did that. Let's pull our loop tighter, and then we're going to yarn over. So yarn over, and then go into this next stitch, and then into the stitch across right here at the same time. So we yarned over. We're going to do a double crochet, which is basically a half double crochet, but with an additional step. So once you're into that loop with the yarn over, we're going to yarn over again and pull through both of those stitches at the same time, and then yarn over again and pull through only 2 of those loops. 1, 2, and then yarn over again and pull through another 2 loops. 1, 2. There's our first double crochet. We're going to work another double crochet into that stitch, but before we work into that, we want to do a picot stitch or a picot. To do that, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip 2 of our chains there, and we're going to slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook. So skip 2, 1, 2, into this 3rd one, put your crochet hook in there, yarn over, pull through that loop, and then through the loop on the hook. This is going to create a little point at the end of your tail. Okay, so after doing that picot, we're going to do another double crochet into the same place that you did your previous one. If you look at where the bottom is, it's going to be right there, and it should already be lined up with the back of the stitch too. So yarn over, go into that same stitch and out through the other side. Yarn over again and pull it through those stitches at the same time, and pull my stitch a little bit tighter. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops only on the hook, 1, 2, then yarn over again and pull through another 2, 1, 2, to finish up that double crochet. You see how we're just going to make a little point at the end there. It makes our little end. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay, so that's our first part of our tail. Next, we want to do a single crochet into the next stitch. And again, don't forget that's going to be into this next stitch and the corresponding stitch on the opposite side. That's going to be a single crochet. Yarn over, pull through, and pull through 2. And then we want to do 2 slip stitches. One into the next 2, into each of the next 2 stitches. So here's the next stitch, corresponding stitch on the opposite side. Yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on the hook. There's our first slip stitch. Let's do another one into the next stitch. Next stitch, corresponding stitch on the opposite side. Pull through and pull through for our slip stitch. And then finally, 2 more stitches. Next stitch is going to be a single crochet. Here's our next stitch, corresponding stitch on the opposite side. I'm just going to kind of wiggle to make sure that we get under all of the loops that we need to. There you go. And single crochet 1 into that stitch. Okay. Last stitch here, on the very end here, we're going to do it right on the corner just like that. But I'm going to pull that out. We're going to do a double crochet, a picot, and then another double crochet. Okay. So first a double crochet, yarn over, into the next stitch, right into that corner, like that. Yarn over again, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, 1, 2, yarn over again and pull through 2, 1, 2. There's our first double crochet. Now we want a picot, yarn over, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Skip our first 2 chains, 1, 2, into the third one. Do a slip stitch, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on the hook like that. All right, our last stitch for our tail here, yarn over. We're going to do a double crochet where that last double crochet is. It's again going to be right there. We're going to do another double crochet into that stitch. Pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, 1, 2, yarn over, pull through 2, 1, 2. It's going to make our last double crochet, and you can see how our tail's coming together. See? All right. Now to finish up this tail, all you want to do is you need to cut your yarn. You don't need too long of an end. That's probably just fine. We're just going to pull it all the way through, and we're going to hide this end in. Thread it onto your needle, like that. And we're going to go in through exactly where that double crochet was made. So right here, we're going to go in through the side of it like this. And then we're going to go back through the top of your stitch where this end is coming out, right there. In through the top of that stitch, and then find some loops on the side. We're just going to kind of start to hide our end in there. We're going to pull it through, pull it a little tighter, and pull it tighter like that. Try not to pull it too tight. We want it to mimic the rest of our stitches, see? And then with this end here, we can just hide it into the side of a few different stitches and then in through the body, and then we'll just come out like, right there. Okay, and then we could just cut this end nice and close, like that. Okay. Now we just have a few more things to do before our dugong is finished. You can see the main part of the body is finished though. The first thing is, let's just pull this stitch marker all the way out. Pretty easy, not too crazy. Okay. And we'll put our body of our dugong down to the side right there. And we're going to get our yarn. And next up, we want to make the fins of our piece. The fins are actually not too crazy though. It's a pretty easy little addition to the pattern. Basically, we're going to start with a magic loop. Now I showed you how to do the magic loop in the beginning. We are going to make 2 of these, but they're going to be made the exact same way. But I'm going to start with my magic loop Again, check out the description if you want to find the video tutorial for the magic loop, or check the beginning of this pattern to learn how to make it again. We're going to start our fins by doing, in round 1, 6 single crochets into the magic loop, just like how we did the beginning of our pattern. So 6 single crochets into the magic loop. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I'm not going to use a stitch marker for this fin just because there's only 4 rounds total. Actually, there's 5 rounds total, but there's basically only 4 rounds total. What does that mean, Lou? Well, you'll find out in a second. So after doing those 6 single crochets, pull the stitch marker nice and tight. And we're going to do, just like how we started our piece, we're going to work around this tail end for a few stitches into our next round. For round 2 of the fins, we're just going to do a single crochet into each stitch around. It's not going to be too crazy. There should just be 6 single crochets total. So find your first stitch right here and keep count as you go around. We're going to wiggle our way into our first stitch. We're doing a single crochet into each one of these stitches. I'm going to work around this tail end just for like 3 stitches, and we're just going to do our single crochets around. Let me redo that. See how I went? See how that piece has it like kind of halfway through the stitch there, right there? That's because I didn't get all the way through all the ends. So let's do that again. There we go. That's a lot better. So 6 single crochets total. There's going to be 1. Here's our next one. 2. Next one over is going to be right here. Pull it open a little bit. There's 3. After I do 3, I'm going to pull this tighter and pull that end over to the side. Do not cut this. We will need it at the end. So that's 3. Let's continue around. This will be 4. Here will be 5. And then this next one right here is going to be our last stitch, 6. Okay, so now you have 6 single crochets around. That's the end of round 2. For round 3, we're going to do 2 single crochets, then 2 increases, and then 2 more single crochets. This is going to bring you up from 6 stitches up to 8 stitches for round 3 of your fin. Let's get that started. That's 2 single crochets. Here's our first stitch. 1, 2, and then 2 increases in a row. So let's do our first increase right here. It's going to be, there's our first single crochet of our first increase and our second single crochet of our first increase. Now we want another increase into the next stitch right here. It's going to be 1 single crochet, and then 1 into the same stitch will be 2. So there's 2 increases in a row. And then to finish up round 3, you just want 2 more single crochets. 1 and 2. Perfect. Now you should have 8 stitches around. That's the end of round 3. For round 4, we want to do 2 single crochets and then 2 invisible decreases and then 2 more single crochets. So we're going back down from 8 to 6 right away. And that's going to pull it in just a little bit and make it a nice shape for the fin. So that is, again, 2 single crochets. It's going to be 1 single crochet and 2, and then 2 invisible decreases. So we're going to go front loop only, go around, front loop only, and then single crochet. It's going to be 1 invisible decrease. Let's do a second one. Front loop, single crochet. Okay, there's 2 invisible decreases. And then finally, 2 more single crochets, 1 into each of the next 2 stitches. Okay, make sure you're into both loops for this next single crochet. We're going to do 1 single crochet, and then 1 more at this last stitch right here will be our last single crochet. Okay, That's going to be the end of round 4. Now for round 5, we're basically going to be doing what we did in that tail. We're going to press our piece flat, and we're going to work into both the last stitch we worked and then in the next row, so that both halves are crocheted together, and we're going to close it tight. Now these are all going to be, we're just going to do 3 single crochets basically, but we're going to work into both sides simultaneously. So first, chain 1. Next, go into the next stitch. I'm going to pull my loop out just a little bit. We're going to go into this next stitch here and into the last stitch we made, which is going to be all the way over to here. Okay, so we want to go under both of those at the same time. Now make sure this tail end is sticking out the top like that, by the way. Keep it over to the side. We're going to need it to sew onto the piece. So we want to work into both of those at the same time, and we're going to do a single crochet. Yarn over, pull through both of those at the same time. I'm going to pull a little bit tighter for my piece, and then pull through both for a single crochet. So that's going to be 1 single crochet. Now into the next stitch and the corresponding stitch on the opposite side. We're going to do another single crochet. And then last one right here, we're going to go into this next stitch and the corresponding one on the opposite side and do 1 last single crochet. There we go. And see how that pulled it right flat into, and it pulled it together. Finally, to finish up this fin, I'm going to chain 1. You can just cut and pull through, but I like to chain 1. Give it a little bit of an end like that, like this, and then pull it all the way through to make your fin. Okay, so there's your fin there. You can see how it's got a bit of an angle to it. See, it's got that bit of an angle. That's exactly what we want. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get our second fin made really quick, and then I'll be back in just a second to show you how to sew these fins on and then add our final bits of details for our dugong. So I'll be right back in just a second. Okay. That's going to be the end. I made my second fin there. Now we have 2 fins. You can see them. Okay, so let's show you how to attach the fins. We're going to attach the fins along the inside of the body. Now, there are very specific places that Jubizu has added in his pattern. He says, attach the fins along rounds 12 to 15 on either side of the body, with the bottom of the fin curved towards the snout, meaning like this towards the snout instead of like this away from the snout. Okay, so you want it towards the snout. Now, I kind of find that the best way to do it is just kind of line it up, find where you want the first one, and then line up the second one and find where you want that one and sew it on. The way to sew on these fins is you're going to have 2 ends coming out of the same place if you kept that tail end in the right spot. The first end right here where you chained 1 and cut and pulled through, that's the one that you're going to start with. So I'm going to thread that onto our needle, and we're going to line this up. I'm going to go like right like this, or like that maybe. And we're going to, let's just place it where we think we're going to want it. I think that's a pretty good spot for it. Yeah, like that. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3. We're going to start right here. So we're going to start into this stitch, come out through the next stitch up, and we're just basically working our way up. After you go through 1 stitch, you're going to go around the stitch on the fin, in through the stitch you just came out of on the body, and then out through the next stitch on the body. And we're going to do that for each one of them. There's 1. I'm going to pull it tight after each one. Next stitch on the fin, same stitch on the body, out through the next stitch on the body, and then in through the next stitch on the fin, in through the same stitch on the body, and then I'm going to come out through somewhere near the bottom of the fin right here, just like that, and pull it pretty tight. It's going to pull it nice and tight there. Now we're going to thread this other tail end from the fin onto our needle. We're going to place it right where that end came in, right here, and then come out through the same place as you came out with the other tail end, like that. And then we could just double knot these 2 ends on the inside. 1, 2. Cut the end nice and close. 1, 2, like that. And then I just take the back of my needle here, and I'm just going to push those threads back into our piece. And that is going to be how you sew on one of the fins. Now I'm going to do basically the same thing on the opposite side over here, but the other way around. I'm going to thread first our end with the chain, but you do want to line it up, and it does come through slightly different stitches. Basically, place it into place where this other one's going to be. Make sure that the end's coming right like that. See, if I did it on the same one, 1, 2, 3 down from the eye. 1, 2, maybe like right there is where we want to finish up the fin. Okay, so then if we want to count back, we want 3 places to sew in and then 1 place to start. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, and we want to start 1 down right here. So we're going to start here, go up a stitch, and then do the same thing where we're coming out through the body, in through the next stitch on the fin, and then into the same stitch on the body, then out through the next stitch up on the body. Pull it tighter, tight, and then do it again on the next fin stitch. Next fin stitch, into the same stitch on the body, out through the next stitch on the body right here. Two, and then this last one, into the body, out through a stitch just under the fin, like that. We're going to pull it nice and tight. Make sure all those pieces are sewn in there. Looks pretty good. Now thread this other tail end onto our needle. Go in through the same place where you started and out through the same place where you ended. Nice and tight. And then we're just going to double knot it, cut, and then hide that end in. And there's there's actually 2 last things that we want to do before our dugong is totally finished. I mean, you can finish it here if you want. If you don't want to be extra, you don't want to go the extra mile. But, I mean, what fun is that, you know? Let's add some detail. Let's add a little bit of something to our friendly dugong friend. Our friendly dugong friend. The first thing we want to do is we want to make it so that these eyes are pulled in slightly like that, because they do have a little bit more of indented eyes. And while we do that, it's nice to add a little bit of eyebrow to the eye. That makes it look a little bit kind of sad. I just kind of like that look a lot. You don't have to do it that way. You can instead just like pull through a stitch and pull through a stitch and just pull it tight, and you don't have to add these eyelids. But I kind of like adding these eyelids. I think it adds something to it personally. So we're going to cut a little bit of an end here, thread it onto our needle. We're going to come out through some stitch on the head, on the top of the head right here, and then come out through just above one of the eyes. Pull it just so we have just a little tail end to double knot to. And then we want to go across the eye. You can either go like really far across like that, or you can go just like right directly down like that. Wouldn't be bad. See how that kind of makes it like a little bit sad looking, but it's kind of cute though too, you know? So we're going to go through that stitch, then we're going to go all the way across and do the same thing on the opposite side right above the eye. Let's see how this one looks before we pull it too much. Yeah, like that. It's not bad. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. Out through the top of the eye, just across from the eye, or on the bottom rather, and then come out through where this other end is, the tail end is coming out. Just like that. Make sure the white of the eye is under that stitch. Boom, boom. And then all you need to do is double knot here at the top. And the tighter you knot it, the more the eyes are going to sink into the body. I don't think you need it to be too sunk in. Like, I think that looks pretty good. Double knot it there. And then we'll just cut it nice and close. And we'll just squish it, and it should hide into our piece. Okay, so that's going to be how you sink the eyes in if you want to add a little bit of a sunken eye bit and add a little eyebrows simultaneously. And then the last bit is we want to add some white thread for the top of our, or for our whiskers. So we're going to take just a little bit of this white thread out. This is actually way more than you need, but that's okay. And the whiskers, I kind of just have them like somewhat loosely in there and just cut them really nice and close so that they don't come out. If you want to secure these a little bit more, you might want to double knot them or something on the inside as you stuff them through. But I kind of find it's just fine just to like have them kind of barely sticking out. So what I like to do is go through a stitch, come out through a corresponding stitch on the opposite side of the nose. Like that. Get a little bit more of our yarn here. There we go. I'm twisting it just to keep it in place. And then pulling it almost through, like that's probably way more than we need. And then doing a loop, a bit of a loop, and coming through another bit on the face, across, and come out through another corresponding stitch. And we're going to leave that loop. Okay, so leave that loop like somewhat open like that. And we're going to do the same thing over here through the next part of the nose, and then out through another part of the nose, leaving a bit of a loop. It can be a pretty big loop if you want. It's not that big of a deal. And then one more time, let's go through, let's see. Yeah, let's go through right here. And then out through right here. Looks pretty good. And this last bit, we do need to keep a loop on this side of the mouth, but on the opposite side of the mouth, we actually don't need to make a loop. And then all you need to do is cut all the loops like that, and then cut all these ends pretty short, like just barely poking out of the nose there. Oopsies, that one actually got pulled out. So he's only gonna have 3 whiskers. If you want to add more, all you have to do is go through a stitch and come out the other side and then pull it tight. And then I just kind of like, I don't know, fold them down a little bit. And then you have little whiskers. Not necessary, but does add a little bit of something to your dugong there. Thank you so much for crocheting this dugong along with me and supporting the fundraiser. If you haven't yet, please make sure to like and subscribe down below and check out the other patterns and designers in this year's Earth Day collection, especially this pattern's designer at Drewby's Zoo. Here you can see some of the other designs that we have in the collection. Thanks again for watching. Pasta la pizza and happy hooking. Bye. So long. Doesn't that seem like how we talk? Goodbye. Thanks for watching, guys.